One of the most complicated questions I've repeatedly asked myself over the last 2 decades is if Mario Kart is a good competitive game. To someone who doesn't actively play the games, the answer is usually pretty clearly no, but almost everyone who has invested some serious time into at least one of the games might have a different answer. To those who played online Mario Kart DS, the answer is likely of course it's a good competitive game. To those who played Mario Kart Wii, the answer was no, wait, yes, actually wait, this game is better than Melee, but also please ignore the fact that 2 people might be justifiably driving backwards every race in this match. To those who played Mario Kart 7, the answer is well, it's no Mario Kart Wii, but it's also somehow better in nearly every aspect design-wise. And to those who played Mario Kart 8, the answer is of course not. But wait, actually, this driving tech just might change the answer to yes. Likewise, with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the answer was no, this game removes that very thing that made Mario Kart 8 good. But wait, yes actually, because it fixed literally every other issue and then some. As someone who has experienced online competition in all of these games for a couple of years at least, the natural follow-up question to all these individual success cases has shifted to just questioning if all of this was just a fluke. Like, I loved competing in all of them in one way or another, literally none were unplayable by any means, but was this happening by accident? Or was Nintendo genuinely trying to balance things for both casual and competitive players all this time? I mean, when I looked at the original Mario Kart 8, I've got to admit, it felt like a fluke. The game's item system to this date still does not appear to be very functional. But yet, this was the one modern Mario Kart game to have advanced driving tech more in line with the classic entries of the series, and it made skill win out much more often than not. On one hand, it felt like strategies like fire hopping were so obvious that they couldn't have possibly passed playtesting without it being approved by Nintendo. But on the other hand, Nintendo also seemed to genuinely think that karts and bikes were balanced ahead of the game's launch as well. So maybe they actually were just clueless. Back in the present, the beginning of Mario Kart World has once again posed these questions. And in the last few post-update days especially, people have been echoing the sentiment that Nintendo does not care about the more competitive audience surrounding their games. But this has been a bit ironic to me, because in the last 3 weeks, I've been taking a break on uploading just to focus in on the game and develop opinions that go beyond just surface level observations. And everything this game has shown me up to this point, at least outside of this update, has kind of suggested that the opposite is in fact true. The game actually appears to be a pretty strong one for competitions, and I'm excited to once again compete in them. But my other more important takeaway is that this coincidence is clearly no longer an accident. So let's talk about the new mechanics that have led me to this conclusion, namely the rails, the wall riding, and the charge jump. Because the more I sit down and think about it all, the more I am finding these mechanics to perhaps be the best gimmick that Nintendo's ever introduced in the series, even over something that feels impossible to go without now, like the tricks back from Mario Kart Wii. But the reason why I think this is quite layered, and dives back into the more casual-oriented side of the series. First, let's start with the obvious. This game is kinda nuts. The world records just a couple of weeks in are insane, even when compared to where they were at this point in other Mario Kart titles all in the same time frame. And new stuff is still being found every day. The strategies already seen on tracks like Great Question Block Ruins, Bowser's Castle, and Wario Stadium are crazy. Whistle Stop summits world record in a span of like 30 seconds, executes multiple shortcuts using every new mechanic, and that's not to mention that the new charge jump gap cut is a replacement for an easier and safer no item cut, also utilizing said charge jump. All of these tracks have been jam-packed with places to experiment with these mechanics. We now have a mini gap jump done out of a charge jump at the very end of Airship Fortress, we have a super precise shroomless ending segment on Toad's Factory that tests your ability to adapt to different timing and cycles on the fly, and perhaps Acorn Heights has my favorite example of the super risky vine jumps at the end of the course. Not to mention that people have discovered a shroomless way to do the main cut of the track through wall riding as well. I anticipate that we are only really scratching the surface on the things that will ultimately be discovered. These strategies are pretty hard and clearly designed for skilled players, speedrunners, or anyone who just wants to sit down and invest their time into practicing them. But I think the best part of it all in my eyes is that this was clearly a deliberate choice. The track design is a dead giveaway of this fact. Like, look at the way these vines are angled on Acorn Heights. It's so obvious what they're here for. But I find that in so many other places too, where rails might not even be that intuitive, they're just there because they are just waiting to be used for something. And I imagine that many that look useless today will be used in world record runs down the road. Back on Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U, fire hopping was a really fun mechanic for speedrunners as well, but it was controversial and led to a little bit of a war between casual and competitive players. Competitive players argued that it made the game faster and allowed for more skill expression, while casual players argued that it was cheating since it was likely unintended. The thing is, banning it online and in competitions felt a little bit ridiculous since it was literally baked into the game's mechanics whenever you hopped, and hopping out of your drift was already useful for realignment purposes to begin with. My perspective of the situation was that the developers' intentions did not really matter at all here. It was in the game, and if it enhanced competitions in the eyes of the community, why not take advantage of it? Literally anyone could do it after all. But unfortunately, this created some toxic discourse between different types of players, where both sides of the discussion credibly believed that they were in the right and that the other side consisted of a bunch of jerks. Now, it never needed to be like this, but it wasn't like it was some ongoing war. Everybody had their side, and sometimes discussions would come up, but certainly now, these discussions should be done for good, because the landscape and world is completely different, in ways that accommodate both playstyles. You see, rail grinding superpower isn't that it enhances the design of the traditional Mario Kart tracks. Its superpower is that it does this while simultaneously making the open world something that is actually fun to explore. And the same goes for all the other new mechanics as well. If you really think about how Mario Kart drove in the past, an open world was not something that was ever going to be easy. It's not like these karts can just climb a mountain or anything like their Breath of the Wild Link, but a world would be pretty boring if there were literally no elevation changes too. So these mechanics, alongside the gliding and water traversal, are what makes the world interesting. Rooftops are accessible, as are the walls. Being able to do a bigger jump at any time to get onto a platform that can carry you higher, in many ways, acts as your ability to climb. And if it weren't for these mechanics, I would argue that the missions would feel a lot more bland overall. What should also be considered is the fact that many of these missions literally teach you new ways to utilize advanced driving methods. Sometimes they'll even directly teach you how you can interact with a racetrack. And they are designed in ways that will make you a more capable player when you're actually doing some real racing. And it genuinely baffles me how little discussion there is out there about how this game sets out to appeal to literally all kinds of players, because the same exact things that are making the game a better casual exploration game are enhancing the competitive racing side of the game as well. I always thought that anti-gravity was a pretty cool mechanic as it allowed for course layouts to be constructed in entirely new ways, but in comparison to World's gimmicks, anti-gravity admittedly just feels like a cosmetic ad. Yes, you were racing upside down sometimes, but was it really changing the gameplay? Rails and wall riding offer you path splits and force you to make more decisions every race. Do you take the rail for speed, or perhaps because it gives you some coins? Is it safer at this point in time, or perhaps will the narrowness of it make you an easy target for the person ahead of you to drop a banana on your path? Are you prepared for that possibility and ready to do a rail trick to jump over said banana? And even without considering the shortcut potential, something I've always found to be a little bit overrated actually, it's all great stuff. But the shortcuts that have been opened up, I would still argue are balanced pretty well. Nothing feels like an auto win, and the risk and reward balance feels just right in most instances as well. And you know what? I think that the item system, while not perfect, is more than passable as well. There's so much to be satisfied about here, and while I do think later discussions on this channel will be warranted, I feel pretty comfortable saying that World is a pretty good competitive game and has the potential to even be the best of the bunch in this regard when it's all said and done. Now, this has been the conclusion I've slowly reached over the past few weeks, and well, it makes for perhaps a decent review. But it was not until earlier this week where I truly realized the importance of some of these observations, because the response to Nintendo's recent update has provided a masterclass on how to miss the point, whether that be from competitive players, casual players, or even Nintendo themselves. To those of you who missed the last video, let me give you a quick recap. Last week, a random track selection in worldwide races used to always pick a traditional 3-lap course. Nintendo has now changed it, so random can pick anything in this game, which usually means a connector track. And this has left the main worldwide mode of the game without any way to pick traditional tracks. This was not a good change, but the actions and arguments I have seen in response to the last update have become about as stupid as they possibly could have been, and it genuinely feels like everyone is becoming dumber for it. So let's make a few clarifications. Starting with my home crowd, the competitive players, you all can stop taking needless jabs at connector tracks. Your stance is already clear, and it was already apparent by the fact that everyone was spam picking random and worldwides before the patch. Trashing connector courses does not help you in any way whatsoever, and will only make you seem like an elitist jerk to the people who play the game for different reasons to you who enjoy these tracks. This has never been a 3-lap debate versus connector debate, it has always been a question of why not both. Literally neither side of the player base has to lose here, when the obvious solution is just for Nintendo to update the game to provide more ways to play online. I am more than aware that most players have understood this, but to the ones who have gone on Twitter and helped invoke some kind of war over Nintendo's design philosophy, this is ridiculous, especially when the game itself and its literal track design provides direct evidence that your premise of Nintendo not prioritizing some skill-based gameplay is simply false. The only thing that this accomplishes is angering people that you have no reason to beef with, leading them to believe that we are one and the same with the people who have been on the Nintendo hate train for the last 3 months, when the reality of the situation is that the only reason why we care about this update is because we literally like the game. If we want to actually win an argument, we have no reason to jump over to the unreasonable side, and that should be left to the people who defend changes that don't even help them, that actively hinder others. Let them be the ones that look bad. Now, to those of you who are out here defending Nintendo's update, let me be clear about something. This update did not, quote, ruin the game for me, or really most competitive players for that matter, so we are the same in this regard. This is because competitive players primarily play in organized competitions, which are done exclusively in friend rooms where you can still pick any track you'd like to at any time. This update is certainly annoying for competitive players, but the most impacted people are the players like yourselves that just prefer playing the 3-lap tracks on worldwide races. And it is a perfectly valid opinion for them to believe that this update has ruined the game for them. Not all of them want to join the Mario Kart World Lounge and make 45-minute commitments every time they want to play some traditional tracks. And the solution to this issue is, again, not one that has to negatively impact anybody at all. There's literally no reason to oppose people with this opinion, because the amount of people playing online is incredibly hefty. So adding more options to play traditional tracks is not going to kill off some connector-focused mode online. And if you're actually afraid that this might happen, this would only be an admittance that you think the mode is just not appealing to the masses, which would actually only further justify any decision to stop forcing it upon people. Now, I've had multiple people telling me over the last 72 hours that because I prefer playing the 3-lap tracks over the connector tracks, that I am missing the entire point of Mario Kart World, and that I should just go back to playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And this has got to be the worst talking point I have ever heard, and it's why I think the beginning of this video is so important to emphasize. Mario Kart World's mechanics were clearly built with everyone in mind. That is the beauty of them. The open world was constructed out of the same exact mechanics that added layers to the traditional track design of Mario Kart World, and these facets of the game are not found in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, or any prior game for that matter, and they are what make World what it truly is. So to sit and pretend like these courses were not part of Nintendo's innovative plans and vision for the game is straight up believing an obvious falsehood. The players that this is being said to have been playing Mario Kart 8 for over a decade at this point. They are some of the biggest Mario Kart fans out there, and a new game has been anticipated for very long in this community of players, and this one has actually been one of the most positively received games in franchise history within the community, and that even goes beyond the competitive side of it all. Many players have already put over 50 hours into Free Roam, a runtime that eclipses the average length of many single-player Nintendo games. And you would never tell somebody that completed a 50-hour Nintendo game and enjoyed it that they're disrespecting the source material when they go off and play something different. On top of it all, the open world literally makes waiting for matches to start infinitely more fun, whether that's just through more exploration, practicing no-item shortcuts, or just flinging items at each other and then rewinding just to do it all again. But now because these players want to relax and play some traditional tracks in worldwide races, they are being told that they're disrespecting the developers by wanting to sink more time into the courses that these same developers intricately designed? You literally cannot be serious. The idea that World and 8 Deluxe's only notable difference is game theming, and that a player's dislike for an update meaning that they dislike the entire game, is an incredibly ridiculous notion, and if you actually believe that, you have no business speaking for Nintendo about their design philosophy. It's all just another version of that old Twitter post about liking pancakes versus hating waffles. It is the kind of irrational conclusion that helps contribute to the dumbing down of overall societal discourse. And you know, I realize that it's hard to stop that in a world where the richest man on the planet literally pays out verified Twitter users who successfully rage bait the public, but we can all do our part to help the issue, instead of engaging in useless discussions. So to get things started, when this video starts inevitably getting comments from people randomly making unsubstantiated claims and complaints about connector tracks, or competitive players, or how Nintendo in general just sucks now or something, do me a favor and tell them to actually watch the damn video. Genuinely, I don't think the developers wanted any of us to beef. We've already done that plenty in the past regarding snaking and fire hopping, or whatever the hot topic was at any other time in the past, whether that's just like meta combos or bagging and whatnot. But let's get something clear for a second. World's new mechanics are there for everyone. Is the game competitive? Yes, it is. Is it casual? Yes. Undeniably, it is both if you just play and observe what the game has to offer. So when it comes to debates of this nature, we should be looking to find common ground, and to be on the side that can only really help people if such a side exists. Maybe you aren't on the side that is most impacted this time, but you might be on the wrong side next time. This is entirely possible because Nintendo is not even remotely close to being infallible or predictable, so when the time for debate comes in the future, we should be able to critique or even praise without blindly and hatefully being called a hater or a bootlicker, because nothing is ever that simple. And I'm not even saying that that can't be the truth in some situations, but we should probably try to hear people out before we actually get to that conclusion and check whether or not our argument actually makes sense sometimes. We should actually make sure to research the issue before ever speaking on it, and additionally, consider that the world doesn't revolve around any of us. If a problem doesn't affect you, then great, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. And if your reaction is actually that it doesn't matter if it doesn't impact you, then frankly, you don't deserve to have people side with you when a change arises that you actually care about. So let me end this video off with an opinion, because I want to start a real dialogue about something. The open world was not a bad idea at all. Knockout Tour has been a pretty fun side mode for online, utilizing said open world. But this change to the worldwide system goes to show that they are relying way too much on connector tracks to justify the open world, and there were better routes to do that than enforcing them upon players in the multiplayer mode. And again, I'm not saying to remove them or anything like that. I think that a better single-player campaign would have been more than enough to justify an open world more thoroughly. Instead of unlocking characters through somewhat of a frustrating gacha system, why couldn't these unlockable characters have missions attached to them found out in the world? I mean, you literally see these unlockable characters out racing in the world as is, and this would have given players more incentive to explore and play the single player as a means toward getting new stuff in the multiplayer modes. This game could have had an amazing single player had they invested more time into the untapped potential of its missions. This single player could have been the perfect complement to what has already been established to be one of the greatest multiplayer experiences in gaming history. But when you get decisions like this update, it instead feels like they are using the world to mess with an already great multiplayer rather than to complement it. So to me, World was a wonderful idea and one that I'm happy they did, but it did have some poor execution. This doesn't mean that I hate the game. This means that I just think there are things that I would change about it, just like with this update. I don't truly think that the game understands how its components best fit all together, and that is one of the negative marks I must give it in an otherwise great review, alongside battle mode of course. Like man, couldn't they have had some elimination-styled battle mode missions as well? But anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to my simultaneous review and rant, and hopefully you got something out of this one today. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll make sure to hit you up with some more world content sooner rather than later. I've also started my weekly stream up again on Wednesday nights at 7:45 p.m. Eastern Time, so if you want to hang out, chat, and maybe play some Knockout Tour between the matches, make sure to be there. I'll be on here as well as on Twitch. See you then, or at the very least, until next time.